I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
good to see you too. How are you doing? I know you had, COVID.
This is a test run to see if I'm in all of my cognitive abilities. I'm doing better, a lot better. Thank you for asking.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. Oh man, again, I'm glad you're here with us today, and we're gonna share some information with our community, and hope that they can join us in these different fights, these different struggles, because there's so many different ones to get involved in, right? Not everybody can be in all of them, but if we can be a part of at least one of them, then we're doing something, right? And so again, thank you so much for being here today. And so I'll go ahead and introduce myself, and then I'll talk a little bit about our program and what we're trying to do with with this event and this interview right here, and bridging communities. And so my name is Fabian Pavon. I'm a community leader for the Empower program in Pomona, and it's in collaboration with the Liberty Hill Foundation and the Latino Roundtable. And our mission is to overcome barriers to sustainable energy, and which is the barriers are commonly experienced by low income and working class communities of color. And so Pomona has one of the highest pollution rates in California, and so it's important that we do what we can to support our community. And so one of the ways that with the Empower program, the way that we can help out or challenge this environmental injustices is by helping low-income communities find financial assistance that's already out there, so that they can, apply for solar panels to get free solar panel installation, to trade in their gas guzzling vehicles for electric vehicles, so we get some of those gas guzzlers out of the road, and also, helping them get rebates and discounts on their utilities and on energy efficient appliances, so that way they use less energy and they save money all at the same time. And so that's just some of the work that we do with the Empower program. And so we understand that there's different ways to really help out our environment. So that's the reason why we're doing this. We're trying to bridge these different folks, challenging environmental injustices in different areas. And so, just for the folks who aren't familiar with environmental justice, so environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. This goal will be achieved when everyone enjoys the same degree of protection from the environmental and health hazards, and equal access to the decision-making process to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. So, I know you're a part of or you're a co-founder of the United Voices of Pomona, and so just for our viewers, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what UVP is. So United Voices of Pomona has established itself as a leading voice for environmental justice in Pomona, and environmental justice opposes the political tendency of allowing environmental hazards and pollution in places where it will disproportionately affect working class people of color and immigrants. And so I'll go ahead and introduce you, Linda. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much for being here today. For everybody that hasn't had the chance to meet Linda, Linda Hinojos currently works as an assistant project manager at an affordable housing nonprofit organization. Outside of work, Linda has a passion for environmental justice and co-founded United Voices of Pomona for environmental justice in 2011. She is an advocate for improving environmental justice issues and social justice issues impacting low-income residents in Pomona. And so thank you so much for the work that you have been doing in the community. And so, we would really like to know, how have you been involved? If you could tell our viewers, how have you been involved in the environmental justice movement in Pomona?
So thank you for this opportunity, Fabian. I had seen a post about the solar panels. And, it's really interesting because in our communities, we are so untrustworthy, right? And hesitant. And you're kind of like, what is this program? Are things really free? Am I going to see costs later? And so it's, we're trying to help, but at the same time, we're trying to dispel, right? Like a lot of these issues in our communities, because we have been wronged so many times. And so, naturally, we're very hesitant to a lot of these programs that are meant to help our communities and our families. So anyway, I am a resident of Pomona. I've lived here for 33 years. And I grew up in the east side Pomona, close to Chino, right on Reservoir. And in that area, that's zoned the industrial area. So we have all of the industrial businesses are sectioned off in that part of the city. That's how the city's zoned. There's residential zones, there's commercial zones, industrial zones. And so that's where I grew up. Typically, you're not supposed to see homes in industrial zones, right? Those are designated for businesses. But however, that's where I grew up. That's where we have homes in Pomona. And I grew up watching diesel trucks go by my house, big old 18-wheelers. And like, I was little and we would run to the front yard and be like, yeah, and like telling them to do this, and they would. And I would have lemonade stands and lemonade sales, and the truck drivers would pull over and buy lemonade from me and my little sister. We would watch the train go by every day. So that was my community. I grew up playing across the street in the parking lot of a factory, of a warehouse. And that's where I played baseball. That's where I rode my bike. And that was like a park, right? But it wasn't a park. It was a parking lot. And the truck drivers were buying our lemonade, but they were also polluting our streets, right? And so I didn't know any of this. And I think to an extent, my family didn't know the damages, the long-term damages that we were being exposed to. And so that was my environment growing up. And that's where my parents live today. And that's where my son has been staying while I recover from this illness. And that's where people continue to live, is in areas like that, which, are harmful to us for many reasons that we can get into later. But anyway, as I grew up, I realized that my neighborhood was very different than my friends' neighborhoods who lived in Phillips Ranch. So I went to Diamond Ranch High, and all of a sudden, my my yard looked really different than my friends' houses, and I started to see that they didn't have 18-wheel trucks driving down their street. They didn't have trains. They didn't have to play in parking lots. And that's how it all became really apparent to me and really obvious to me that there was something really wrong with the environment where I was growing up in my setting versus what other friends my age, their life and lifestyles were completely different. And so that's where it all really intersected for me, was high school, and really understanding when the trash station was proposed in 2011, understanding that this regional trash station, meaning that it was going to accept trash from 15 other up to 15 other cities, I think. And understanding that was kind of like the last straw for me, and kind of saying, how much more can my neighborhood take? How much more can my community take? And so that was really the catalyst for jumping in.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that. So you mentioned the waste transfer station, right? And so around what year was that unfolding?
So that was proposed, I think, like in 2011. Um, it's a really, it's a really interesting story. So given that this area is the industrial zone in Pomona, typically we see these types of businesses there. And so um, I had read in the newspaper that they wanted to open this trash station. So it was going to be almost 11 acres of trash. And I, I was really concerned, and I was like, we already have, you know, hundreds and thousands of trucks coming up and down Reservoir and on Franklin, on Phillips, on Grand, on Ninth, and on Mission, coming from the 60 freeway. And so I was just like, well, how this is going to damage us so much more. And so I started knocking door to door by myself, um, trying to tell people, hey, do you know that they want to put a trash station 2 blocks from our house? And that was really how I started my own kind of fight against the trash station. Eventually, I joined. Um, I joined. They've gone through several name changes now, but I joined One LA, which was a nonprofit based out of LA. Um, we joined together and we went around to different schools, different neighborhoods to talk about the waste transfer station and bring um, awareness of the trash station. And so that's how the trash station started. And that's how that fight started. And we started to little by little go to different communities. We went to parks. We went to different neighborhoods and passed out flyers and churches and schools and talked about the waste transfer station and how this was potentially going to be, a very disruptive and dangerous business to come into the neighborhood. Eventually, One LA and myself parted ways, due to some backdoor negotiations that they did on behalf of the community, of the brown community, right? Of myself and my neighbors without really talking to the community. And so we split off in very different directions. And eventually it was really interesting how that entire story happened. But, for several years, the community fought the waste transfer station, and we pressured city council members to not vote for the trash station. We went to planning commission meetings. There was a lot of community that came out. And I think that was really like, it changed politics in Pomona those few years for the better, I think, because it really showed, council members that, and the city that, this wasn't going to be an easy project to go to pass. But there were a lot of, political things on the side as well, corruption and the company paying off the mayor and paying off city council members for the votes. So we had a lot of challenges those several years.
Wow, that's an interesting story. So so you were saying that you were going around to the parks and you were knocking door to door, informing the community. Like how would you describe the general sentiment when community members heard what you had to say about the waste transfer center?
It was really interesting going door to door because you never knew who was going to open the door, right? And so sometimes I would knock, and it would be a family that didn't speak any English, and so they were Spanish speakers only. And you know, in that area of Pomona, in the southeast area of Pomona along Reservoir, it's almost 60% of the people there speak only Spanish or speak only one language. And about 40%, a little over 40% don't have a high school diploma or higher than a high school diploma. And so you have people that are very separated by language barriers, and you have people that have very low education. Um, and you have people that live in the poverty line, right? Below the poverty line. But it didn't matter because they understood that they didn't want the trash station there. They understood that it was going to bring vermin and parasites. They understood that it was dangerous for their kids to breathe the air. Um, so we have a lot of data that plays into why these businesses go into these areas, but at the end of the day, people know what's healthy for them and what's good for them and what isn't. And and so I got a lot of people who were upset, a lot of people who had no idea. The city kept this under wraps completely. The trash station didn't have to really announce that it was proposing the project, um, because of the rules that the way that the city has these rules. They only had to notify people 500 feet from their property line. And so it was maybe like one house and one other business. And that's all, those are the only two people they had to tell, but they were going to take up a whole block of property, but they only had to tell, two people. And so nobody knew about it. And everybody was really surprised and everybody was really upset. And so, um, along the way, I found other residents who were as indignant as I was, and who were um, wanting to fight this as much as I did, if not more. And so, we all kind of formed and stuck together and unified to fight the trash station.
And so I know you mentioned, sometimes there was language barriers with trying to get some of the community involved. Were there any other barriers that you were able to see, and trying to get some of the community members involved in this struggle?
Um, we so it's when you want community involved, and this is what I've learned, like being in the community and trying to organize people, like you have to be out there, you have to be on the ground, you have to be with the people. And that means you go to the people. It doesn't mean you set a time somewhere on this side of town or at city council, at city hall, and be like, hey, come here. um, these people in these communities, they don't have time, they don't have the energy, they don't have, you know they're home from work, they've got kids, they've got families they have to take care of. They are not trying to drive to this business, to this building and be there at 6 p.m. So we were flexible in that we tried to have meetings at Washington Park, which is typically where we had our meetings, and sometimes we moved it to like Philadelphia Park. But mainly our meetings were at Washington Park, and they were kind of informal, and everybody kind of brought their chairs, and it was really Fabian, like I remember those days, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was like 23 or something like that, 24, and we had a big those big post-its, and I would like make up an agenda on the spot, and we would strategize. But people would come, like they knew that Mondays at 6 or Mondays at 7 at Washington Park was the trash station meeting, and people would come with their chairs and they would sit down and we would sit in a circle, and that's how we would meet. And that's how we did it. It was all about people continuing to go door to door, people still disseminating flyers, and really being there. And I think like that's one thing I've learned, and one thing that that I think is so important. Nothing replaces that. Like you can go on Facebook, you can go on social media, but you're not going to get the people that you need to get on just those platforms. Like you have to be in the community, in the streets.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was
To
awesome.
say the least. Yeah, I mean, it must be beautiful. I mean, given the circumstances that was pretty messed up, I think it's, when community can get together and really work together, and especially when it's not the same folks that are always doing the work, when you're able to get different types of community members you've probably never seen before, that's to come together. It's just sounds beautiful. And so what would you say were the results of the advocacy of the community against the transfer station? Like, what were some of the results and maybe some of the lessons learned?
So, you know, it was really amazing to have so many people come together, because we had like residents, we had community members, we had business owners, we had professors, we had teachers from local Washington Elementary School, we had seniors, youth, and everybody in between. Everybody was involved to some degree. Teachers were having us come speak at their classrooms, or Anselmo Olmos, who was he lives on 9th Street, I think. He was an elderly man, and he collected like 10,000 signatures. He just walked and walked and walked and collected, all of those signatures by himself or with the help of his son. We had several like organizations, like at one point, Latina Roundtable was, part of UVP. Arturo Jimenez was part, John Nolte, so many, Jim Zambrano, which is, an attorney. So there was Erin Runyons, she's a co-founder. So Ben Wood, what came from United Voices of Pomona, what came from the trash station was, first of all, like you got a bunch of people who didn't know they were activists come together and like become activists, right? And then you also got you involved sectors of the community, people who had never gone to city council meetings, senoras who didn't speak any English, that were like, they wanted to read their paper, they wanted to read their letter, kids that were staying up until 12 o'clock to be at city council to talk about why they didn't want the trash station, teenagers and 10-year-olds. So you got everything. And it was amazing. We had media come out. We did press releases and stood on city council steps. And, I filed a lawsuit against the city of Pomona and the trash station. It was a serious culmination of like everybody coming together. And I think that is one of my fondest memories, and probably one of the most powerful things that I saw come from the trash station. And even with all of that, Fabian, like when we talk about people power, the corruption, the still for it really says something about local government when your elected officials, the people that you put in those chairs to represent you, seeing all of this day after day after day, meeting after meeting, still voted for the trash station. Some did, and so that also makes it really obvious too, like who are you voting into these seats, and who really has the community's best interest in mind, right? Who's in it for themselves and their own political aspirations or their own sites or the money, and who's in it to really listen to the community. And we had some really amazing council members, and then we had some council members that we were like, you have to go, and you're going to go out, and your next election, we're going to vote. Not only are we going to vote against you, but we're going to canvass against you too. And so, the people power was the takeaway. It was amazing. We came from nothing, and we sprouted and grew a bunch of activists and a bunch of people who now are like hey, let's make noise about this. We need to make noise about that. And also, it gave perspective to how important it is to have um, people who are good, elected representatives who are going to listen, who are going to listen to the people.
And when this was going on, I remember I was like a sophomore, or I mean, no, I was like a junior or senior in high school, and then I think like while I was in college, I would still hear like I was at Mount Sac, and I would still hear some stuff going on with the waste transfer station. Like I don't know if you all did this, because I wasn't like I wasn't too involved in like the city politics or anything at that time. I was more involved at like Mount Sac as a student, building my leadership skills and stuff. Um, I remember there was something called toxic tours or something like that. Was that you all doing that? Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. So we started doing toxic tours, and we're gonna do another toxic tour soon. I think this COVID, kind of knocked me down, and I'm coming back up. But UVP still wants to do toxic tours, and it is a little different now because of social distancing and things like that. But the toxic tours were basically people interested in seeing what is the industrial zone like, or what exactly is going on over there, and so it was us meeting to do walking tours, or people on bikes or in their cars, starting at one location and then hitting all of these businesses that were very out of compliance. Like, you don't have to work for the city to drive to a business and be able to see that they have oil on the ground, or they're scrapping, junking cars, and like, they're ripping them up apart, and stuff is just seeping into the soil. You don't have to be a specialist to see the violations. You could see them with your own two eyes. My 7-year-old son can tell you when a pellet yard is out of compliance. And so these toxic tours basically take people who want to know more, and we take them to these businesses, and we say, notice the wood chips on the ground, notice the stale water that's there, notice, these oils, notice, how this is a fire hazard. And so those are the toxic tours, and they were basically ways for us to show people, like, this is what's happening, this is what the city is turning a blind eye to. This is what we need regulated to better our environment, to decrease the toxic and the hazardous substances that are being released, right? Or things that are going into our water tables. So those are the toxic tours, and they really opened the eyes of people. And eventually, the Cali PA came down, excuse me, and United Voices of Pomona, with other local coalitions, gave the California Environmental Protection Agency a toxic tour of the area as well. And even on that little ride along, these people who are specialists, who are experts, were able to immediately say, oh, they're out of compliance. Oh, that's a major violation, and they came back and they did their own initiative and their own studies. And um, it ended up citing a lot of businesses, ended up closing businesses down. Some businesses closed down because they got so many fines. They were like, we rather close than have to be up to code, And so what's happening in Pomona, that businesses rather close than clean up? And who's overseeing this? Why are they even allowed to get to the point where they have to shut operations down? That's not something easy that I think a business owner decides to make. But if you're that out of compliance, and it's cheaper for you to close your business than to bring it up to code, like, that's a serious issue. And who's looking at this right now?
And I think some of the thoughts that come to my head as you mention all of this is, with Pomona, having, there's a lot of working class people in Pomona. They have to focus on working and providing for their families and surviving, and and also thinking about how, like, Pomona has some of the highest pollution rates in California. You can't help but to think that, everything that you mentioned about things being out of compliance and or violating, codes and things like that, all of this, I feel like it's become normalized in Pomona, right? And so, with with that being said, like, how would you think, how can people get more involved with, environmental justice in Pomona? Do you have any advice?
Um, yeah, so you're right. Like, things have been normalized, I think, to a certain degree, because people pay attention to what is put out there, right? So if nobody's making noise about the industrial zone, if nobody is saying, hey, look at these problems, look at what's going on here, it goes to the back burner. And the trash station really forced, at that time, for those several couple years, really forced people to see what was happening there. And I do, there was a report, the environmental impact report for the trash station, talked about things being normalized, where it said, that the cancer risk for the two residents, for the two homes living directly next door to the trash station, would exceed the AQMD cancer risk threshold. Like, this document is saying, the likelihood of these people acquiring cancer exceeds whatever thresholds, whatever maximums the state has set. Like, this is gonna, it far, far exceed it. And still council members voted on it. It's like mind blowing, because we're in elections again, right? And so I really want to drive this home. It's like, please pay attention to who you're voting into office. Please pay attention to where their ethics stand, where their morals stand, where their allegiance to community stands. Because we had, Gina Escobar, Stephen Atchley, Danielle Soto, Freddie Rodriguez up to one point, and I think later he changed his mind because we pressured him and we were like, what are you doing, all of that, they all voted for the trash station. Elliot Rothman, the mayor, took, over $10,000 from the trash station, pocketed the money, and then every time the city had a vote, he had to be like, oh, I got to get out of here because I took too much money and I can't, it's unethical for me to vote. So yes, these things become normalized, but it doesn't mean we have to accept them. And so, right now, things are not always being done. I'm not putting everything I do, online, right? I'm not putting everything on our social media or Pomona pages, but UVP is currently looking, still, we're always focused on the industrial zone. We are looking at ways right now to bring air filters to residents in that area. My street right now there are 6 homes in that neighborhood, and out of those 6 homes, 4 houses have had people die from cancer in the last 6 years. So almost one person from every house has died of cancer there. And that's a tiny neighborhood. It's a tiny, tiny neighborhood, but you have almost 100% of cancer deaths from those 6 little homes. And so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, that's definitely not normal. Something needs to be looked at here. And I have reached out to all of our city council members and our directors at city departments, the city manager and the mayor. I've gotten one response, and that's been consistently from my council member, Nora Garcia. I haven't heard from anyone else. And so in any case, I'm looking at these cancer findings, and what I'm going to do is continue investigating, because this can't just be my neighborhood, right? This cannot just be my street, because you still have Grand and you still have 9th Street up ahead of me, and Mission, right? And these are areas where there's a lot of poverty still too. And so that takes time, and that takes people power, and if people want to get involved, if people want to learn like how it is to interact with community members, or how it is to bring awareness and bring information to people, they're more than welcome to reach out to me. They're more than welcome to reach out to UVP, and ask how they can get involved. Like, all of this takes time, and but it really is worth it, because at the end of the day, you are able to inform people. And I think, it's hard, because even with information, like, what can people do? Like, they can't sell their houses. They're gonna get up and say, oh, well, yeah, I live in an area where there's high risk for cancer. Like, I'm going to sell this house, or I'm going to just go find another apartment. Like, those are not viable solutions. And so we have to think, what are ways that we can help our communities, help our neighbors. And all of that just takes brain power, and it takes, collaboration and thinking outside of the box, right? And I can't do it alone, and UVP can't do it by themselves. So it takes networking, and it takes, people who are interested and people who care to come together.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That was great. Thank you for sharing that. And so I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, where would you say Pomona is at right now in terms of environmental justice? Like where are we at now with the waste transfer station? Where are we at now with some of like the code violations that you brought awareness to?
So I think, it's the waste transfer state, Valley Vista and Grand Station Recycling will tell you that they have, one of the most state-of-the-art transfer stations designs, and that they follow all of the protocols, and that they're closing all of their doors when they need to, when they're unloading, or, things like that. And every business will tell you that they're doing what they need to do, right? The recycling recycled wood products is another huge business operation that's a couple hundred yards from my house. And they take treated wood, untreated wood, it doesn't matter, like any type of wood and trees and bushes, anything. And they have a huge grinder, and they just grind stuff all day, right? All day. So you could have a truckload of, let's say you took you demolished a shed or whatever, and you have a bunch of wood, and you're going to go take it all, and you're going to dump it there, and you're going to drive away. And so this business, what they do is they recycle all of this wood. And so they are operating almost 24/7, I think, with the exception of Sundays. And so they're just grinding wood all day, right? And so that has been happening for 20 years in my neighborhood. And that's just sawdust and wood particles just in the air. We see them in the dirt, we see them in our air, like when we're having carne asadas. We see them in the furniture in our house. We're breathing that. The AQMD came several years ago and put little petri dishes on our fence, and it collected so many things, not just the sawdust, but also like rubber particles from the tires of diesel trucks that drive up and down the street. And so we're breathing all of that in, and all of that's settling in our lungs, right? My parents' lungs, my neighbors' lungs, my uncle's lungs. People are dying. Like, my neighbors are literally dropping dead from cancer. And I have reached out to the city, and even if it's not just, this is District 3, this is happening in District 3, but I would think like even District 6 or even District 5, like you would think that a council member or the mayor would say, Linda, we're doing the best we can. I'm sorry about the loss of your neighbors, and let's see how we can, like, nobody has said anything, and it's mind-boggling to me. The lack of compassion, the lack of even reaching out, and maybe it doesn't interest you because it's not happening in your district, and so you're like, not my problem, like, but at the very basic humanity like level, to not uh even say, let me direct you here. I don't know, something. And so um I think we have to keep going, and we can't accept this as just, it is what it is. There's always room for improvement. Tim Sandoval, the mayor, did a few years ago um, come out and regulate some of the pallet yards, because we also have, like, in the industrial zone, there's a lot of lots, there's a lot of properties that are like oddly shaped. They're kind of small, they're square, you can't really put a huge business there. And so let's say you're the owner and you just own this piece of property. It's not very big, you can't put a business there. So you're like, and I come along and I'm like, hey, I want to rent this property off of you. And you don't care what I do with it, because what you want is the rent. So you're like, okay, so you give me the ability to rent from you, and then I just set up shop and start doing whatever I want. Maybe that business is putting pallet yards there, putting pallets together there, or maybe that business is collecting green waste and like trash or scrap, and then just transporting it out, right? So like people dump and then other people come and take. And so that's happening a lot in the industrial zone. A lot of unregulated business owners who rent out or lease out their properties to other people, and then other people kind of doing whatever they want. And there's no oversight from the city. So nobody's going and saying like, hey, this is not a proper business, or even if it could be a proper business, you're not licensed or you don't have a permit. And so um, there needs to be oversight. And changes can happen because those pallet yards were closed, right? And Tim did do that 2 years ago. He rode around the car. We rode around the car together. I gave him a little private toxic tour, and he was able to see, what's going on. And not a lot of things have changed since that time, and he did talk about, like, we could collaborate with, so and so, and put some trees here and create like a barrier. And I was like, yeah, that would be great, because trees help, right? Like they give us oxygen, they take in, and clean out our air. But that was like all really nice talk, but where was the follow-up? Where was the action? And so you can't just also say things to quiet people down, thinking that they'll go away, right? Like, okay, well, now this is what I've said, and this will keep somebody quiet for a little bit longer, and until, because when you're living there, and because when you're seeing your neighbors die at 60 years old, words become words, and we need action. So we need people to stay involved. We need people to um, care and collaborate with, and we're always toxic tours coming up, and if people are interested in seeing what's going on and how they can help, there's a lot of people they can reach out to at UVP. We're all over Instagram and Facebook, but even reach out to you, and you reach out to me. I know that Fabian, like I see you out there, like you have, major passion for a lot of things in Pomona too. And there's always I can always direct people to you, right? And you can always direct people to me because we know where our strengths are, right? I know what your strengths are. We know we all are very resourceful people. We've all, grown up here. We know a lot of people, like-minded people. And so there's always ways to get involved and to get in touch with someone. Maybe you don't know, but you know somebody who does.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, Linda. I mean, everything, all the knowledge you dropped today and experience and everything, I know it definitely gave me a lot to think about, a lot to take away, a lot to reflect on. As you mentioned, yes, like yes, I'm a little, I'm involved a little bit in Pomona, so I definitely want to see how we can work together. Like I said, it gave me a lot to think about, and I think there's definitely stuff that we can do for that area. Just thinking about me, with me being involved in like education and Latino roundtable and going up for running for public office and things like that. I this is something that's definitely gonna stick with me, and I'm definitely gonna help spread the word about this. And you can expect that from me. I'm definitely in this. I've been learning, just through the Empower program. It's been kind of like forcing me to like look more at the environment and reflect on our community and our city, and it's time. We've been needing to do something about this. Our communities have been created this way where it's people of color, working class people don't matter, a lot of the times. And it's time for a change. It's time for a change. And so thank you so much for being here and educating us and helping us, raise awareness about these issues. And I look forward to working together with you and improving our community, improving District 3, and wherever we need to make these changes, sister. Thank you so much. And again, if anybody would like to follow you or UVP, where can they follow you all at?
So you can find me just Linda Hinojos on Facebook, and then United Voices of Pomona for Environmental Justice. We're on Instagram and on Facebook. And then we also have the community garden, the Buena Vista Community Garden. That's another project of United Voices of Pomona. So we don't just look at the industrial zone, but we also look at, we want to reclaim these areas, and we want, to be very community centered and community oriented, and give people healthy alternatives, give them the opportunity to grow their own food and compost. And there's so many educational things happening in the garden as well. But yeah, reach out to us, and we need people power. Like I said, like this illness derailed me a little bit, but I am meeting with the Cali PA. We have meetings later today, where we are talking about getting air filtration systems. And so that would be like, maybe you can't move out of the hood. Maybe you can't move out of, my parents aren't going to leave. They're not going to go. And that house is going to stay there, and that house is going to go to myself and my sisters. Right. And so what does that mean? Or what does that mean for my neighbors? We can't help you move, but if this one little air filtration system can help you while you're inside of your house cleaning your air, I feel like there's ways. If we can plant trees, there's a lot of organizations that plant trees. I see them in Philadelphia Park. I see them, at different parks. And if those coalitions, if those organizations partnered with UVP to put trees in the industrial zone, like, we're not revamping the area. We need to improve the area. Like if our council member wanted to reach out to these businesses and be like, hey, we can provide trees, beautifying their landscape, right? Because environment matters. And people, they where they grow up, you take that with you, right? And so how are you going to care about your neighborhood? How are you going to care about your community if you're seeing that no one is even, they're not taking care of it? So, why would you? And so it's not, it all is very relevant. And so there's a lot of ways that that area can be improved. And there's a lot of ways that, reclaiming space, putting green space. Um, there's ways that things can be improved, and maybe they won't be changed. The industrial zone is the industrial zone, but there's always ways to improve, and so that's what I want to look for, and hopefully we find people who want to put in the work too, even if it's like a school project or it's something that you're doing on this. It doesn't, you don't have to be completely altruistic. It's not like I'm a martyr. This is what I'm gonna do. But if it serves you in one way or another and it teaches you and you take that on with you later, um, that's great. And you've also done a part in helping improve this area. So
That's right.
thank you so much for the opportunity. I could talk about EJ all day, every day. So I appreciate you, Fabian, very much for giving me this space today.
Of course. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. You've been very motivational, and I would love to keep working together. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Okay.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it, folks. We just had our interview with Linda Hinojos. And so I hope you all are as excited as I am about combating environmental injustices in Pomona. And so we're going to keep working. We're going to keep partnering with different folks who are tackling this issue from different angles. And of course, again, with the Empower program, we're doing our best to bridge low-income communities with free solar panel installation. We're doing our best to help identify funds for communities to be able to trade their gas guzzlers for electric vehicles and much, much more. So if you would like to, find out if you qualify for any of these programs, please feel free to fill out our intake form. And our intake form is on our website, which is latinolatinoroundtable.org/empower. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.